Welcome to Year 8 Statistics, Lesson 1, Categorical Data. In this lesson, we're going to have a look at a concept called categorical data, and then we're going to look at methods of representing said categorical data. Methods that we'll be looking at today are tally and frequency tables, and then we'll have a look at some vertical and horizontal column graphs. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to give a definition of what categorical data is in your own words. You should be able to decide whether data is categorical or not. And finally, you should be able to read and construct a number of ways of representing categorical data. Alright, first part is, question is, what is categorical data? And a way in which we can classify it is by classifying what it's not. And we know that categorical data is data that cannot be represented numerically. Rather, categorical data is typically organized into groups. Cool. Now that we've had a look at what categorical data is, let's have a look at how we can represent it. So I'll jump to a quick example over here. Jordan wanted to know which season his classmates liked the most. The variable favorite season is a categorical variable, and the possible categories are autumn, winter, spring, and summer. Jordan wanted the following categorical data from his class, where A is equal to autumn, W is winter, SP is spring, and SU is summer. And down here what we've got is the data that Jordan has collected from his friends. Now what we're going to do with this data is, firstly we're going to organize it into something called a tally and frequency table, and then we'll try and organize it into, let's say, a vertical column graph and then a horizontal bar chart. Now a tally and frequency plot, or table I should say, they typically look like this. Now there's no one way to draw them up. There's multiple ways, and let's just say there are certain ways that are more appropriate to represent data. So looking at this one over here, what you can see is it seems quite adequate in what you can represent. But if you compare it to one over here, you've got the added feature of the sum or the total of data entries into the table itself. So this method of representing data is simply a way of organizing. Now to draw this up, what we need to do is, I'll bring it up one more time, we need to have 3 different columns. So we need to have a column representing the types of data that we have, then we need to have a tally, so the count, and then we need to have the frequency, the total amount that sums up in the tally. The reason we use this sort of table is that if we've got data incoming and we don't know the maximum amount, so you can use the tally to keep putting strikes down. Alright, now to draw this up, what I first need to do is put down all of my data, I should say, or all of my titles. So the first one I'm going to put down is seasons. Now I'm going to be really careful to try and make this align into my grid, because using the grid I'll be able to have a much cleaner looking table. Alright, cool. Now that that's out of the way, what we're going to do is we're going to sort all of this data into our tally and frequency table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each data point, so SP, and I know SP represents spring, and I'll put it against a tally. 2 A's, 1, 2, summer, and winter. And I'm going to do this for all of my data. Alright, cool. That's done. Now next part is I'm going to count up the tally and write down the frequency. So the frequency itself is how many times something occurred, so we simply count the number in this tally. So 5 plus 3, that's going to give us 8. 5 plus 5 plus 1, that's 11. 5, and then 6. Now the final one I need to put down here is down the bottom we've got total. And the total is simply adding all of these together. So 8 plus 11, that's 19. Plus 5, that's 24. And plus 6, that's 30. So there's a total of 30 answers here. Alright, so this is how we do a tally and frequency table. Alright, next one we're going to do is using this tally and frequency table, I'm going to show you how to put together a vertical column graph. So a vertical column graph, it's going to look something like this, similar to this. Also, say something like this. So it's actually not that very hard to do, and in fact they're quite easy to read, but still it's just process we're going to go through here. So first thing I'm going to do is, firstly, I'm going to count how tall each axis needs to be, so the vertical and the horizontal, and I'm going to rule that up. Then after that, I'm going to allocate space for my different categories for data. And then after that, I'll draw in the bars. So looking at the data here, the biggest value is 11. So 11 over here, so I need to have a chart that can go to a total of 11, and I've got 4 different categories. So I need to somehow space it out such that I can fit all of these in. I'm thinking I'll do 5 boxes across per category, and that will give me a nice amount of space. Alright, first things first, I need to rule it up. So you always want to have a little bit of extra space on the axes. So I only need to go to 11, but I'm going to go up to 12, just so I've got that little bit of extra space to work with. Now I'm going to mark out the notches. So this is 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Now, with these, you don't have to measure out every individual number. You just need to make it consistent and make it such that it's easier to read, or readable, I should say. So if I do every even number, then you know the ones that aren't marked out, that's going to be the odd numbers. So you can still read what's going on here. Now, next part is I need to mark out my columns. So the first one will be between here. Now, over in the table here, I wrote the seasons out of order. I said autumn, spring, winter, summer. So that's a really strange climate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write them in order. So I'll start off with summer. Alright, now that these are in, I need to draw the bars. So I'm going to draw the bars in a different color. I'm going to use the color blue. So for summer, it goes up to 6. So I'm going to measure 6 out here. Autumn is 8. Now the final touches for this particular type of chart is I need to give it labels. So firstly, I'm going to call this favorite, or I call this chart the favorite seasons. Then I have to label the vertical and the horizontal axes. So I'll move this over so slightly to give myself some more space. And I'm going to label the vertical axis here. I'm going to label that frequency. And then I'm going to label this horizontal axis. This is going to be called seasons. And now, when I look at this particular graphic over here, it's an easier way of digesting all of the data that was shown over here. And it's even easier than looking at this tally and frequency table. So what we've learned in this particular section is how to draw a tally and frequency table, and then how to draw a column graph, vertical column graph. Now, there is another sort of graph that we can look at, and this particular graph, it's called a horizontal bar chart. So a horizontal bar chart is very similar to what we have just seen, but rather than the frequency being on the vertical axis, it's actually on the horizontal axis. So the bars go across, whereas in the first one, rather than bars, we have columns and they go vertical. So not much difference between the two, except for the fact that one goes up and down and the other one goes left and right. Both valid ways of representing this tally and frequency data. So in summary, what we set out to do at the start of the lesson was to, was to learn what categorical data is, and then we wanted to have a look at how we can represent categorical data using tally and frequency tables, as well as vertical and horizontal column graphs. By now, after looking at all of this material, we should be able to give a definition of what categorical data is, decide whether data is categorical data or not, and then finally we've had a look at ways of reading and constructing various charts, such as the vertical column graph and the horizontal bar chart.